It's just past 6:30, and we will call the Tuesday, February 19th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting to order. We have a full quorum of the board present, and we welcome all of you. And if you wish to speak on any of the cases that are before us, you will have an opportunity. Our first item is approval of the minutes from the February 5th, 2019 meeting. We've all had a chance to read those. Are there any comments or corrections? Otherwise, we'll consider a motion to approve. Mrs. Chapman?
Yes, I move approval of the Tuesday, February 5 minutes.
Do we have a second?
Madam Chair, I second.
Very good. We have a second. And all of those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Our first item tonight is case number LR 18-005, the comprehensive plan amendment for 1841 South Dayton from single family to employment. And Larry will represent the county.
Thank you, Chair. And again, Larry Mugler from the Planning Division. As your Chair mentioned, this is a plan amendment request, so I want to make it clear that this is not a rezoning or another formal action that you would forward on to the Board of County Commissioners, but one where you have jurisdiction, you can approve or deny the request. It is a request to amend the map from this 4 square mile area plan. The figure in the staff report shows the area that it's currently in the plan as residential 1 to 2 units per acre, and the request is to change it to employment, which happens to also be the land that's just to the south of this particular property. The notice for this hearing was mailed to 264 addresses that are within a half mile of the site, and we also published it in the Villager. No sign is required for plan amendment requests, so that was done because we assume that sometimes a plan amendment request will deal with a lot more than just a single parcel, and therefore it'd be hard to put signs up everywhere that the amendment might address. So there's no requirement for signage. I handed out to you before the meeting some comments that we received since the commission packet was mailed out. There were 4 additional comments in there, 2 supporting the request and 2 opposed to the request. So we're still running a little bit more opposed than 4, but fairly even. And I think that's all I have to get you started, unless you have some questions about the staff report. If not, I'll turn it over to Robert Bruce.
Madam Chair, I have a question for Larry. Larry, you made a comment about if this change were made that this underlying zoning that would be applied may prohibit, with setbacks and so on, use of the property based on its current size. Can you comment on what those setbacks would be?
Yes, the one we were most concerned about is that any of the B zones, the business zones, require a 50-foot setback from adjoining residential areas. So on this particular property, that would be 50 feet from the north and 50 feet from the west, which leaves a small window for a building, and the applicant can address their ability to utilize what would be left, assuming that they would come forward with rezoning after this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I guess not. Thank you.
Robert Bruce is going to represent the applicant. Stand over here by that.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you so much for having us today. My name is Robert Bruce, and I'm a lawyer, and my address is 1543 Champa Street in Denver. I'm here today with Mohammed bin Masood. I'll have him introduce himself, and we're going to talk a little bit about him, his property, why he's here today, and what his vision is for the purpose of asking you to approve this change in the map so that he can move forward, hopefully, with his vision for the use of this particular property that sits as a vacant land and likely will without this kind of action. Mr. Ben Masood, will you please introduce yourself?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. And my name is Mohammed bin Masood. I live in Colorado for 42 years. And I own 6 properties that all in Arab County. And I project my revenue is about $1 billion. And I have paid my dues like everybody else with taxes for all Arab counties. And yeah, I've been resident since 1980. And so basically I have a ground maintenance company and also have an automobile business. My office is in basically Peoria and Iowa. And I own that piece of land and the potential of use it to accommodate like what the rest of the area is. And we'll talk about what is the area all about. So I am in Dayton, and if you go all the way from Parker all the way to almost Iowa, to almost Colorado, it's about 90% all commercial. And also in Colorado, Colorado Avenue, I would say about 75% of the residents are self-employed, and they all have equipment, they all have trailers, they all have semi-trucks, and the whole area around me is a commercial site technically. But it's not commercial because it's deemed residential.
Mr. Ben Masood, you've indicated here that you have an export-import business. Is that for automobiles?
Yes.
Can you explain how the vision for your use of this site would be used in connection with that business as opposed to some other type of automobile business that we might think of, like Grease Monkey or a body shop or something like that? Can you just make sure they understand what your business is versus
Mr.
that?
Benassu, could you step to the microphone so we can hear you better, please?
So my vision for this piece of land, and let's go back a little bit. I called 3 real estate companies.
We'll get there.
And they're all, because of the structure of the area, they all recommended it is not, by all measures, can be built a house. And that's even an agreement with even Arapahoe County because of the structure around my piece of land. So my vision for this piece of land that I've been paying property tax every year is, for example, last year I paid $3,600. Next year I'm going to pay $5,000 to Arapahoe County. That is a piece of land. My vision for this piece of land is I have an office and I have a small area, like I mentioned to you, in Peoria and Iliff, where I do all my sales and my cars. What I would like to use this piece of land that it's dead right now is to store my cars in there and have maybe a bay or 3 days. And all what I want to do is just put the details. So clean the cars in there, store them nicely, and then utilize them to my office. That is my objective.
So is it going to be a paint booth in there?
No.
Is it going to be changing oil?
No.
Is it going to be other sort of repairs?
No.
Are you going to have hazardous waste
No.
that sometimes goes with cars?
All it is just details.
So have you explained to the board what you mean, that you would create a value in the property that's in current disrepair?
So when I bought this piece of land, and you will look at the land itself, it was a dump. No fence, trash, weeds all over. I took, and that is usually me, I take my properties and I maintain them and make them nicer. So the slide will tell you how the property was in distress, and then I made it very nice, put a fence around it, put a gate around it, a lot better than a lot of units around me, both in Colorado Boulevard and Dayton, where trash is all over, cars are parked outside in the street. Mine is all kept inside, maintained inside a gate area.
So we have here a slide of the map. Does that accurately reflect where your vacant land is right now?
That's correct.
Okay, so is it off of Jewel in Colorado?
That's correct.
In Dayton, in that area near Parker Road?
Yes.
Right. And is that the address that we're looking at today, 1841 South Dayton?
That's correct. So this is the area before me. This is how I bought the area. A lot of trash, lots of weeds. You look behind me, there's a commercial building behind me. That commercial building is a dog training facility, and it's a big bunker, and it's in a residential area approved by Arapahoe County. Okay, in a residential area.
So just so that we're clear on what we're looking at, we see that that's your lot, but are we looking south, east, north, west?
Yes.
Which way?
So this is exactly in front of me, that's my land.
Yes.
And the south of me is a commercial deemed employment. Behind me is a big bunker, about maybe 4 bays, dog training facility, sitting right there. Lot of equipment. The husband of that person is using his area for his own business. He has a moving business company. So I'm telling you, the whole area you could see, it's all commercial around.
So when we talk about the plan amendment here to the south, is that already employment?
Yes,
And so what you're asking is that that be increased to include your lot as well.
that's correct.
So we're looking for a plan amendment that would move the employment line from here to over here.
That's right.
All right.
This is the land right now.
Okay, so is this how you've improved it and
Yes.
changed it?
This is how I maintain it. I spent $55,000 to make it look nice.
One of the concerns that was raised by the 4 Mile Sub-Area Association group was that you had been storing cars here. Was that true?
No, not now.
Yeah.
I did a little bit before because that's what usually the practice of the area around me.
And so did you find out that that wasn't allowed yet?
I've been told, so I moved everything else. However, everybody still have their stuff outside. This is what really bugs me. I moved everything out. Behind me, there is a lot of cars, a lot of trucks, all the way in Colorado Boulevard, a lot of junk, a lot of trucks, a lot of semi-trucks, and all business.
So is this the current condition of the property as it is today?
Yes, it is.
All right. So we've talked a little bit about what you want to do with the auto detailing and storage. If I can go back, and I apologize for doing that. How many bays would you anticipate being able to put onto this lot?
I would like at least 2 or 3 bays.
And there was a question earlier, and you've seen in the staff report that there's a concern that you might not be able to do too much with it if it meets a setback plan. Do you remember that?
Yes, and I met with Bill Skinner, and I met with Miss Larry, and we sat down, we came with a plan, and I said, whatever deemed right, I would like to comply with Arapahoe County because that's who I am. Most of my neighbors are not. They live in a residential area and they're using their lands for their own business. That's not me. I would like to comply with Arapahoe County, and that's why I want to change it to employment. And all what I want is 3 small bays where I can do my detailing and store my cars.
And did you then map it out with Mr. Skinner about how you might be able to accommodate the setbacks that are required?
Yes, we did.
And if you come up with a plan that, if approved, and you go through that process, it
Yes,
still
we did.
works for you?
And actually, Bill Skinner is the one who suggested that, and Mr. Larry was sitting in the meeting, and I said, whatever works for me. As long as I'm using my land, paying my taxes, and utilize the land so I can maintain my service.
All right, let's talk about these adjacent uses that you referred to. What is the photo to the left where it says
This is
power
a
line?
building behind me. This is a building behind me, exactly in the west of me. This is a commercial building by all definitions. And the resident of this area using their building for training that business. I have got a video to approve that if you want it.
All right.
Also, in that building, there is all kind of equipment in there. And also the gentleman who owns that property, he has his own business. He is moving, he has a truck moving business. And they're moving in and out every day.
All right, now what about this photo here to the left? Where is that in conjunction with
That
your
is
property?
electrical plant that's a little bit south of me.
And would that impact your ability to build a house on this property? Why is that?
100%. Because it's not deemed right. If you're trying to build a house with all these commercial building, electrical high voltage, south of me is another Heritage Electric, which is all electrical company, and he's using his land for storage. It does not make any sense to build a house in there. And this is not only me. I've got 3 letters from three different agencies. They're all saying it does not make sense.
And we'll get there.
Yeah.
So let's go here with the extra photo. Is this a photo to the left?
There you
Is
go.
that the same building that you already referred to?
This is another business, which is JJ Landscaping. Okay, this is a little bit south of me, and you'll see this one all in Colorado Boulevard, Colorado Street. Businesses after business. Even the president of the association, he has a Stocco business, and he has all his equipment in his land. And one of the people who opposed mine against me, he has all his equipment in the street. And I have a picture of that.
Okay, now let's talk about what you're actually looking for here. We talked about the employment zone being immediately to the south of you.
That's correct.
Are you asking for the plan amendment then to just move the line so that you could have the employment zone just a little bit further up this way?
And that is also a recommendation by Arapahoe County.
And is that the going to be consistent with the area as you've described it?
I agree. Yes,
Okay.
it is. Because it's all in the south. And this is actually recommended by Bill Skinner and Larry Mobler. Said that let's move the line a little bit. That way you have all that area there.
All right. Now you understand that staff actually said that they're going to recommend denial for a couple of reasons. I'm going to have you. We'll respond to those.
Drink some water.
Sure. And I can go ahead and talk to that issue. Mr. Ben Masood came in and asked about the process, and he's been facilitated by Larry, who's done a good job in that regard. But he's come up with a denial, and the request at page 3 it recommends that this is consistent with the process. So the process that we're asking in full transparency is to amend this to become more with reality. The concern that's raised by staff is that it would be hard for a major repair facility to meet the setback. But what is being described for you for Mr. Ben Masood here is that it's not a major repair facility. It's something that can fit within that setback. And there seems to be a misunderstanding in some of the comments that we've seen as to what Mr. Ben Masood wants to do. He doesn't want to have a grease monkey type operation. He just wants something that works with his auto sales business, which would require 2 bays and fit within that facility. So if you look at what that use would be, it can certainly fit within that setback concern upon a subsequent rezone. And so Mr. Ben Masood has explained to you that he's here in full transparency to try to go through a process of a plan amendment, which isn't necessarily something that he wanted to do, but that's what he understood he had to do to be here. I think it's also very important to note what else staff has said in their report, which is, in the long run, it might very well be that there is a assemblage that could be done along in here for a different kind of residential product. But that's the long run. Mr. Ben Masood has some vacant land now that he wants to use. And so that's why he's here for you today to say, let me use this. In the long run, we can maybe do an assemblage, but in the short run, it doesn't make sense to do a residential community of one home so near to these commercial uses and these power stations. That's supported by some of the real estate professionals that we've talked to. So you see that we have presented to you 2 different letters here, and a third, I think, that was in your most recent package of the additional comments. And so Mr. Ben Masood has talked to various realtors and say, can I build a house here? Can you sell it? And so we have some other reputable companies that have said, no. Cherry Creek Property says, no, I can't get a house done here. It doesn't make sense. RE/MAX does the same. And then if you also see that in the additional package of information that you received because it was after the submittal. And I don't know if that is, yeah, that's our same RE/MAX one that we had submitted to you separately. So it's in my slide here and in your supplemental materials. The bottom line is that you have a residential plan map that isn't for a residential area until and unless someday, somehow, maybe you can do an assemblage. And until then, Mr. Bin Masood thinks that he ought to not just be able to pay taxes on it and instead have some sort of right to do a limited business use. And rather than just doing it, he is seeking the plan amendment to do so. There's also some support. You heard from Larry that there is all about an even amount of support, neighborhood support. Mr. Bin Masood has explained how close Heritage Electric is. They have supported it. A neighbor has submitted a approval letter.
If I may add it, those are my two neighbors next to me.
And those are the immediate neighbors.
Two immediate next to me. The ones who are opposing all the way to Colorado Boulevard, and me, it's so total hypocrisy. Because next to him, it's a big business. Across the street, it's a big business, JJ. The other person who's opposing, he has a business, dog training facility, moving trucks, equipment, name it, and their land. And they're coming and opposing. Total hypocrisy.
And so there is some opposition, as you well saw, from the 4 Mile Association. And if I can address each of their 4 points, is first they're saying, well, an amendment contravenes the purpose of the map. Well, as we saw from from the staff's report at page 3, there is a process for amending the map. It's not written in stone. We're asking you to say, does that map make sense today, not when it was first issued, but does it make sense today given the constraints of the neighborhood, the ability to use the property for residential purposes or not? Since there is a process that we're going through, we think that the evidence, as you're going to hear it today from Mr. Bin Masood, myself, and some others, is that it makes sense to amend this map to conform to some reality in this particular situation. There's no doubt that this is a request for a single lot map amendment because it is fitting right within what should be the employment zone that is immediately to the south. So there's really a justification for the single lot because it's so close here. He's not asking for an amendment to employment zone that's not immediately adjacent to an employment zone. So it makes sense to have this particular map done in light of the fact that there's an objection because it's single lot. We've addressed the issue that they're saying this is improper in the subzone because it's a dirty use. Mr. Bin Masood, I think, has cleared that up to say it is not. It's a detailing for a business that he already has so that he can make the cars look nice as he goes along and sells them and stores them as they come and go from his inventory. As far as there being zoning violations, which was the other objection from the 4 Mile Association, we've indicated and shown you the evidence with the photos of just how nice this lot is, in that upon being advised accordingly, Mr. Bin Masood has not stored any more cars there. So you'll hear some more testimony, and you'll hear some other people come up and really try to scare you, as this is a bad use. One of the complaints that we got in the last packages is that it's storage for kids who are going to have hot rod races along there. I think Mr. Bin Masood's explained to you that that's not what the storage of these 3 bays are. It's the in and out of his operation, not a bunch of kids who are going to store cars so they can race along there. That's just not what's happening here. It's not a heavy industrial use, as many of the objectors are trying to suggest. And so what we're going to ask here is the approval of the map amendment so that Mr. Bin Masood can proceed with those 2 to 3 bays for detailing and auto storage for his business. We want you to conform the map to the reality of the commercial nature of this surrounding property, as we've shown in the photos and as Mr. Bin Masood has explained to you. Please allow for a legitimate use rather than unusable vacant ground for which there's somebody who's willing to pay the taxes but not wait forever in hopes of an assemblage that might make a residential use someday, somehow in the future. And so I'll let Mr. Ben Masood make some final comments to you, and then we will turn the podium back over to staff and for the balance of the open hearing.
So again, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. It's very emotional to me, obviously, because I invested quite some money in it. I ask you to be pragmatic, be rational, and be thoughtful. Nothing is in stones, even the Constitution of America. So anything can be changed based in the nature of the area. The area is dynamic. Have it changed. It's not residential in my views. It's not a residential area in a lot of Arapahoe County. And even from the 4 square miles, some folks believe that the change is going gradually. You've seen a commercial building behind me. You've seen the electrical power plant. You've seen the south of me, it's all commercials. All along Colorado, a lot of commercials. I want to be like everybody else. I would like to utilize my land. I would like to continue to pay my taxes to Arapahoe County. Like I mentioned to you, last year I paid $3,600. This year I am supposed to pay $5,000 for a piece of land. By all definition, can be a residential. So I ask you again to be very pragmatic, very thoughtful, and very rational in your decisions. I also sat down with 4 square miles and educate them. Some of them, they don't even know the employment is all the way. I had to show them. That's number one. Some of the folks in 4 square miles, they changed their land to employment. And they believe the area needs to be changed to commercial. They told me personally. But they will not say it because it's a conflict of interest. That's number 2. Number 3, I sat down with Arapahoe County many times trying to come with a conclusion and comply and figure out a solution for a dead area that we cannot use. Number 4, I sat down 2 times with 4 square miles. And I'm trying to be very pragmatic and very rational. I told them what I would like to use right now. 3, 4 years, 5 years from now, I'm all games. If the things change, I might buy the next property. Mr. Mike Flynn, I have talked to him. Then we have a bigger area. Then we can talk. We can maybe build multifamily units. We can use some condos. And I told this one to 4 square miles. But in the meantime, I would like to use my land and pay my taxes. Thank you.
Thanks for your time and consideration.
Okay, at this time, if there aren't any questions, we will open the public hearing. We have several people that have signed up to speak. The first one is Robert Bruce. Yes, whom we've heard. And we do ask that you limit your comment to 3 minutes, unless you represent a group, or if you're just going to agree with somebody, you can just state that. We ask that you give your name and your address, and we also ask that you try to limit your comments to the comp plan change request. It's confusing because you want to talk about a possible business and a change in zoning, but that's not what we are considering tonight. We're only considering the change to the map from residential to employment. So the second name on the list is Rachel Love. Okay. Mohammed has spoken. Donald Pritchett. You can speak again at the end. Donald Pritchett of Colorado Avenue.
Good evening, board members. In 2005, the 4 square mile sub-area planning staff work sessions, inclusive with engaged neighbors, resulted in agreements to equitably organize the patchwork of various zoning types, including proportionate provisions for employment. The entire metro area is certainly experiencing tremendous growth. Residential zoning protects property values and, more importantly, preserves the special quality of life factor a home provides as a refuge from the hectic pace of our times. I appreciate the thoroughness of the staff's report and agree with its conclusion to not change the comprehensive / sub-area plan, allowing additional encroachment of employment centers into our residential neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Lori Kennedy.
Good evening. I'm Lori Kennedy, and I live at 9630 East Colorado Avenue. And I'm here to talk a little bit about the project. So your slides are excellent, by the way. I have the property with the giant building on it. That building was and did come through Arapahoe County. It is in compliance with the county, and it is zoned residential. So I just wanted to talk about a couple things with the overall growth plan. And first of all, I want to say thank you to the county because Don and I, my husband's here too, we've lived here in this area since 2000 in this house. And the county, some projects that have been done are the cottages at Dayton Place, Whisper Sky, the single-family homes that are north on Dayton, and the library. These are all community-based single-family residences, and we're in support. So when it comes to this particular project, so Heritage Electric is on the south side. I'm on the west side, and J&J Tree is west of me. So Heritage Electric was granted a zoning change because of the fact that it's in your packet, but you'll see it's this like 300-foot electrical guide wire thing in their front yard. They also back up to the XL substation. I am kitty corner to the XL substation. When the county did this originally, the word that they used over and over again was hardship, because nobody wants to live in a house that has this giant thing in the front yard. They tried to rent that house. People wouldn't rent it. They also tried to have a daycare there, et cetera, et cetera. It just was uninhabitable for someone to live in a single-family home there. Virgil, the owner, has done an awesome job with all the setbacks. He's landscaped between my house. There's a 25-foot setback. He's landscaped that. He maintains that. XL is all landscaped. They maintain that. J&J Tree, yes, is a business, but J&J Tree was there. They were grandfathered in. They are zoned industrial. They were grandfathered in, and that place was, talk about a very awful, awful place. Before J&J bought it, they spent $100,000 just getting all the crap and the trees and the shavings out. It is pristine over there now. Virgil has an 8-foot fence at Heritage Electric. I know that you saw my property, and Don and I, it's all cement. We maintain it. It is pristine. The front of my house is pristine. If you come by, I have 300 tulips. So again, I want to maintain the residential. I know that I have Virgil behind me who, has this salvage kind of business. He has an 8-foot fence. He was asked to do that by the county. He's done it, and he's been in total compliance. His setbacks are great, and he maintains them. J&J, if you drive by there, you would never even know there was a business in there. They have a huge fence around there, and again, it's always maintained. So we all have this common denominator of the XL substation. This property in question does not even, it is not even affected in any way, shape, or form by the XL substation. So I just wanted to point that out. I am sorry that the owner of the property, the applicant, bought a property and thought that he could use it for something different, and it's become quite a problem in the neighborhood. I know that you guys all know me because I have been calling and complaining. Yes, the lot is cleaned up right now, but you guys, my letter's in there. I'm not going to take any more of your time. But at any given time, there's 25 cars. There are tow trucks coming in and out. I mean, and the one letter, I'm just going to bring this up, and I know that it's about the sub-plan, but the one letter by Mr. Flynn, if you really look at that, that man has had a homeless man in a tent in his backyard for the last 3 years. So obviously, you know, that impacts how he feels about the community. I love my home, I love my neighborhood, I love my neighbors, and I just want it to remain residential. This is a very small lot, and I just don't understand how he can even work with the setbacks alone, and let alone cars and everything else. So I'm just asking that you support opposition of this, as the staff has already recommended, and I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. The next name, and I apologize if I don't pronounce it, Farouk Gradin.
I just signed my name, actually.
Okay, that's fine.
Madam Chair, Lori Kennedy should have put my name on there as well, Don Kennedy.
Yes, it's down here.
May I have a moment?
Yes, you may.
I'll be brief. Lori shared quite a bit. My name's Don Kennedy, and I reside at 9630 East Colorado Avenue. And I heard Mohammed refer to our property as running commercially out of there, and this first specification, I do own a moving business, and it's at 58th and 925. We have a warehouse there. I do drive, and on occasion, I will drive the truck home and park it on my property. The next day, I go to work. So I don't run a business out of there. My cars are stored in my building, and just for clarification there, we are a residential property. As far as the property in question here, they show a picture of the property with the fence and the lots cleaned up. If you'd like to see a picture with 21 cars in it, there's not a whole lot of room for a 2-foot setback. The cars are up against the fence all the way on both sides. You have a 20-foot area in the middle that they can fish a car in and out. When they have these 21 cars there, and they were exhibiting the kind of work they were going to do on it, that was putting body parts onto cars to make them sellable. There was fresh paint being put onto cars. There were orders in this residential neighborhood of a commercial property. That was truly a commercial use being done. Air ratchets, things going off. The cars weren't being detailed. They weren't being washed and polished. They were being close to a body work over there. And that's not what that property really fits. If he wants to come in compliance with some setbacks and become commercial, Virgil has done a great job in that. I, again, oppose the decision to change it to employment and prefer to see it stay as a residential property. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pritchard. Mr. Kennedy, okay. Abdu, Allen, in favor of it? Benhar? I can't read the writing.
Who's in favor? He's in favor.
Okay. Ahmed Farah? Okay. Kevin Gross? On South Boston Street?
Good evening, all. Kevin Gross, 1230 South Boston Street. I'm one of the members of the 4 Square Mile that meets with people that would like to bring projects forward to us in our area. And we've listened to Mr. Masood a couple of times, almost a year ago, and just very recently, where he met with us and asked if we would support his project. And he told us quite a bit of details about how his neighbors, and you've heard this already, so I'm repeating a few things, how they run their properties, and he feels he should be able to run his property as a commercial property as well. But with some further research, and the zoning department has found out it wasn't quite true how these properties really are run. They're not commercial properties, they are residential properties. So coming forward today and opposing, the real reason on this is that we want to see our vision going forward with bringing residential more down into that area on that block. The pictures that we have seen tonight, and I'm not sure what you may have seen prior to tonight, Everything looking the opposite direction and across the street is all residential. So you're just kind of getting a vision of commercial properties only tonight, as displayed. So to change the comp plan just for one property really upsets quite a number of things. I guess what is our sub-area plan if we just allow one person to come in here and make a change just for himself? We kind of looked at it as if the gentleman didn't do his homework before buying this property to know how he can use the land. He testified tonight before you that he wasn't really using this property, but over a year ago we did discuss with him that he does have cars on there, he is servicing them, and he's not in compliance with county code. He has also been bringing in electrical wiring and water hose lines from neighboring properties to service these vehicles. And I think the county has heard, the zoning department has approached him and asked him to stop doing so. So we're not really getting quite the true story here on how he wants to be a good neighbor, and how I kind of feel that you have to be in compliance first with the county. You just can't take matters on your own hand. You just can't say how you want to use your property. You have to go through a process, and that's why we're all here tonight. So we do see the future of more and more even high density going down into that area, and that is the plan for the future. Of course, it's not tomorrow, and it's not next week, but it is the plan, and we do have projects currently that the county has sent to us that are in that area where more high-density residential homes are going in just within a few blocks of that. So we want to continue this. We don't want to upset the sub-area plan by changing this just for one person. So I kind of feel we wanted to see that he has his fair chance of bringing this before the neighborhood committee, but he has still not asked for a date to come forward to bring it to the public. So it hasn't even gone that direction yet. So I don't know why he's not taking that up with the public. I guess he has his reasons. So tonight I'm just asking, please, do not approve this because it really doesn't fit in with the plan that we do have with the sub-area. And if you have any questions, I'd be delighted to answer them for you.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Lynn Suave?
My name is Lynn Save, and I live at 7676 East Arizona Drive, and I'm an Arapahoe County resident. I'm also on the 4 Square Mile Development Committee, along with Kevin and a couple others that will be testifying tonight as well. I just wanted to spend my time with the detail that Kevin mentioned, but I wanted to expand on. And that is, I wanted to talk a little bit about the meeting that we had with the applicant on November 13th of last year. There are 5 of us that sit on that development committee, and our role is to listen and to give feedback to the applicant. It's true that, and I specifically said that I acknowledged his predicament. And what I wanted to underline is, what is that predicament specifically? The predicament is that, from my understanding, the applicant bought this property from a realtor who represented it as employment when it was really residential. And even though there is some, I acknowledge that as a predicament, we also said, basically, shame on you, where was your due diligence? Anybody that's going to be purchasing a piece of land like that should do their due diligence, and that's on them. So we said in that committee meeting that we would not put ourselves in a position of recommending a change to the map to support a remedy for a purchasing mistake because of his lack of due diligence. And so subsequent to that meeting, then one of our committee members wrote a letter of opposition, and that was in your packet, and you'll be hearing a little bit more detail about that. Yes, that's what so I ask that you oppose this change to the map. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no other names on this list, but if you wish to come forward and speak, just come forward and give us your name and address, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is James Parrott. I'm at 2153 South Dayton Street. Would it be okay if I put something up on the screen with a flash drive? Okay, thanks. Thank you. If you don't mind just going to page 3, please. This is the letter of objection that the Foursquare Mile Neighborhood Association submitted to the county regarding this project. I bring it up to present this map, and I'll refer to it in a minute. I'm going to focus on a couple of responses to comments from Mr. Bruce. I'm not sure if I caught his name correctly, and Mr. Ben Massoud, but it seems to be the focus of the applicant's presentation is that the property needs to be changed to comport with surrounding uses, whether those uses be authorized or currently unauthorized and in violation of current zoning. You did hear from the adjacent property owners that the adjacent properties that are zoned residential are in fact not being used for business purposes. And if I could just draw your attention to the map here, the red square is the property at issue. The green square is a storage lot that is zoned employment. And then the blue square is the Excel substation. You can see from the aerial view that all the properties to the southeast, east, northeast, north, northwest, and west are in fact currently developed as residential properties. I understand that Mr. Ben Massoud alleges that one or two of the adjacent properties are currently being used in violation of the residential zoning. The Foursquare Mile Neighborhood Association believes that you should not change the comprehensive plan to comport uses to those that are in violation of zoning. I think that would encourage more zoning violations, more noncompliance with zoning if by simply using a property in violation of the zoning or the comprehensive plan, that could be used as encouragement to the county to then modify the comprehensive plan. So that's one of our significant comments. Excuse me. Mr. Bruce made some comments in response to the letter that the Neighborhood Association submitted, and I'll just address those real quick before I wrap up. So one of the comments was that the objection from the Neighborhood Association was that the use should be in compliance with the maps, and the point of them being here was to change the maps. That's actually not the point that we made in our objection letter. The point was, if you look at the maps, they are single-family residential. They are currently being used as single-family residential. The use of the property should not be changed to conform to something other than what the maps are planned for and what they are being currently used for. So it's kind of a spirit of the neighborhood, and you heard from some prior commenters say this is a long-term comprehensive plan that was arrived at through a lot of negotiation and regional cooperation, and that's the point of the comment from the Neighborhood Association, is that this map is consistent with the uses that are there today, and to change the map to be inconsistent with the uses is not what the Neighborhood Association wants to see happen. I hope that made sense. It's a little response to response to response. Second point was in regard to the quote-unquote Dirty 13 uses, and if you're unfamiliar with the history of the Dirty 13, I believe Mr. Lampert is fully prepared to address that history today. But the the number 5 item on the list of Dirty 13 is automobile parking lot, service station, including auto body work or vehicle rental. So the use proposed by Mr. Van Massoud, we believe fits squarely in with the number 5 on the list of Dirty 13 uses and is inconsistent with the 4 square mile neighborhood plan. There is another point addressed in the Neighborhood Association's objection letter, and that is simply that a single lot amendment to the comprehensive plan is not something that the county should ever consider doing. Comprehensive planning is by definition long-term, it is regional, and it is community-focused, and to bring a change that is very, very local to the point of being a single lot, being done to accommodate non-conforming uses, and being done in response to a single person's request is not in compliance and not consistent with good community planning principles. That's all I have. All the other points that were made have been addressed by other commenters, so I won't rehash those, but I'm available for questions.
Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
So, question for you about what's currently shown in the sub-area plan designation. That's showing single-family 1 to 2 DU per acre. Is that correct?
Single family 1 to 2 what? I'm sorry.
Dwelling units per acre?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that consistent with the properties that are currently in that area? Are they all half acre or larger?
I think that some of the properties that are just north of Colorado, some up here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I couldn't say for sure, but those might be denser than 1 to 2. But the other surrounding area is definitely consistent with the 1 to 2 DU per acre.
And you made another comment. It sounds like 4 square miles considering either proposing or supporting a higher density to that area to allow for either paired home, multifamily, or supporting that. Is that accurate?
Well, I hate to speak on behalf of the entire community association, but there has been a lot of discussion about that, and the trend does seem to be going toward a higher density, single-family overall development plan in this area. I think the 4 Square Mile Neighborhood Association's desire is to see something done as a comprehensive regional planning effort rather than in response to just a single lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to come forward?
Good evening. My name is Kim Dulek. I live at 9501 East Colorado Avenue. I'm the Vice President of the Greenhaven Polidoro Homeowners Association. And I was also referred by one of the prior speakers that I'm one of the people that has a home-based business. And that is true. I operate tech tractor services, but what is different in a home-based business than a regular business, that with a home-based business, you do not have any employees. You do not have any people from the general public that come to your property. You do not do any work on the property to generate income. And you do not cause basically any kind of disruption to the neighborhood environment. And these are all requirements to have a home-based business, which is what I've done. And I've lived there for 35 years and have had a business there for all that time, never had any complaints. I think that the point I'd like to make is that I've spoken with many of the residents that are not here tonight in the Homeowner Association, and none of them support this change to the comprehensive plan. I also have a letter here from our president of the HOA, and that's Tim Beam. He's also not in support of this project. I'd like to submit this. He's sorry he was not able to be this evening. And that's about all that I really have to say. If you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please come forward.
Hello, my name is Keith Homberger. I live at 9357 East Mexico Avenue, a couple streets over. About a decade and a half ago, we had a kind of an uproar in the neighborhood when they put Whisper Sky and they built so many units on a smaller acreage parcel that we had enough of an uproar with the citizens of this neighbors in there that we actually formed a committee with the approval and the guidance of the Planning Commission. It was, I believe, 2004 when we set that up. We were the ones back that set up the general future of our neighborhood. We were the ones that set up the residential as opposed to the piecemeal, the way that it was set up from back in basically the turn of the century, turn of the last century. We set it up to where we wanted residential with residential, and we wanted the high-density residential with the high-density residential, smaller 1 and 2 DU. I think that was one of the questions I heard earlier. Most of the neighbors that you're hearing from and are seeing tonight are 1 and 2 DU in that area. We're hoping for no exceptions to our original plan. We want you to stick with the original plan. The reason that this is kind of a difficult meeting tonight is Mohammed screwed up. Mohammed did not do his research. He bought a property that doesn't conform with the zoning that he's wanting to do. We're not willing to change the zoning of our entire area to accommodate Mohammed's mistake. There were some statements that Mohammed made earlier suggesting that RE/MAX said that this should be converted. RE/MAX did not say that this should be converted. Somebody that works at RE/MAX may have. Cherry Creek Realtors did not say that this property should not be built this way. Some individual at Cherry Creek Realtors may have said that. There's some blanket statements this evening that ought not to be applied to suggest that this has more value than it does. As a neighbor, we want to keep this residential. So I would encourage you to not to deny this. That's it. Thanks. Any questions? There's another project that you all are ready to see where they're looking to put 8 DU next to all of us that are 1 to 2 DU. And we're hoping that you stick with the 1 to 2 DU like we all set up about a decade and a half ago. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Mr. Lampert?
Good evening, planning board members. Mark Lampert, 9022 East Colorado Drive, here speaking on behalf of Foursquare Mile. You've heard from 3 of the committee members already tonight. I'd like to just try to sum up some things that need a little further clarification. First of all, in the picture that you saw of the parcel, ironically, you did not see when you looked to the right of the subject site, that was a single-family home. To the right of that, a single-family home. If you would have looked at the front of the left home, was a single-family home. It's used as an office right now for Heritage Electric. All along that Dayton block are single-family homes, except for this fence that runs along Dayton. So, ironically, the pictures were not all there. They should have shown the home to the north, and the home to the north of that, that's on the corner of Colorado and Dayton, because that's a single-family home as well. The building behind, as you've heard from the Kennedys, that was a contentious little situation, too, when that was proposed. That went through a variance control hearing, and the variance board approved that. Approved it for whatever reason in a residential area. However, at that time, Foursquare Mile fought it, and we ended up succeeding in seeing it continue on and be approved. So that was put in on a residential area for the purposes that that family has. We don't believe that it is set up as a commercial, because that's not what the family, you heard Mr. Kennedy talk that he does own a trucking company. He brings home a rig and he takes it out the next morning, and that's something that you can do when you own large land. By the way, his land is an acre there, and he has a single family home on it plus that building, so he's over an acre. The home that is directly to the north of this, that Mr. Flynn owns, about the same size of this parcel. The home that would be to the north of that corner lot, that's probably, I'm thinking maybe twice the size of this lot. But again, all single-family homes along there. The property, as we saw it at the very beginning when the applicant purchased it, started piling cars in there all the time. We just saw cars and cars and cars, and then when you look over the fence, there was an extension cord coming from the north for his power. There was also a hose coming from Mr. Flynn's house for water. Totally illegal. Totally illegal. Fire, I believe, shut them down, and the water district shut them down as well, because that's not an authorized use there, since there were no utilities on this parcel. What we're starting to see is what type of owner we're dealing with. If this person started to do that, and finally, when I think through the county and through discussion that the county forced him or suggested that he come before the 4 square mile to talk, that's when we said that is not an allowable use in the 4 square mile area. You heard about our Dirty 13, our famous Dirty 13. You all should be able to recite it, and the first one that you remember is no 24-hour business. You were successful in shutting down a Waffle House. The Board of County Commissioners saw that you did the proper thing by shutting it down. The applicant chose not to pursue, so hence there's no Waffle House. So we believe that that Dirty 13 has been acknowledged by you as something of value. And as you heard from Mr. Parrott, that the Dirty 13 does discuss this. This was one of the top 3. Sexual-oriented businesses were number 1. Number 2 was 24-hour restaurant operation. And third one was car storage, car detailing, car repair. So, as you see, this does not fit the sub-area plan for the 4 square mile. The power substation that you saw is not directly attached to this. It's attached to the parcel to the north. So that does not have a play in this parcel at all. You heard that there's commercial all over the area. There is not commercial all over the area. I think what we have is the applicant that's thinking that commercial is by trucks and a variety of other vehicles that are maybe home-based, home occupations versus business. And I think you heard it described very well. Home occupations do not have business relations where people come and go, deliveries. The person that you heard from has a tractor that he runs, cutting lawns, cutting fields, things like that. He doesn't have customers coming to him. He stores his tractor usually off Colorado Drive or Colorado Avenue behind his property. So I think there needs to be a distinction between the word commercial uses in the area versus home occupations that are in that area. I think that the issue comes down to spot changing the sub-area plan. As one of the originators of the 4 square mile sub-area plan back in 2004, the whole purpose of doing that is so that we wouldn't be doing this tonight. And that is that we have a layout of how we expect that area to be developed. When a developer comes to the county and says, this is what I want to do, the first thing they do is they pull out the sub-area plan and they say, this is what our vision is. This is what the vision of the residents that work 9 months, twice a month, coming up with. We don't want changes. We've gone through at least 2 and I believe 3 times when the county came to us and said, let's revisit the sub-area plan and see if we need to tweak it any in the time since 2004. And each time, and you'll remember Julio was the one that brought at least 2 of them forth to us at that time. Julio said, your neighborhood has changed. We need to revisit some areas that possibly need to be tweaked. At each meeting at that time, the discussion was, no, We do not want changes to our area. There have not been enough changes to radically change the sub-area plan. So the idea is, tonight, we do not want the sub-area change. We do not want to see this particular usage, which is contrary to our Dirty 13, come into the neighborhood. We believe, and in our conversations with the applicant, we told the applicant, we do not feel that this is an applicable use. We would encourage you to work with your neighbor to the north and to the neighbor to the north of that and assemble that and come back with a residential plan, which is very similar to what is up on the corner of Florida and Dayton, where we have some duplex or some paired dwellings. KB Home, that seems to be the big thing right now. So this would be a perfect situation for that. But remember, the corner to the south, single-family home as you drive by it, with a storage lot that adjacent to the power plant, to the power station. Homes all across Colorado, homes all across Dayton, and then right across the way is we have Dayton Place, the senior development there that's in Aurora. So we are a residential area. There's no question about it. We want to remain the residential area, and this area is the low density. We talked about higher density. I think the word higher density, meaning high multifamily, that's not what we're looking at. We've got all the multifamily that we want. Situation is possibly a little bit larger than 1 dwelling unit per acre, 2 dwelling units per acre, 3 or 4 dwelling units per acre. That's what we're talking about, higher density on that. So, again, we concur with the staff's recommendation of denial. We urge you also to take denial and not change the neighborhood because this is not an acceptable use for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lampert. Does the applicant wish to comment? We will close the public hearing if there are no more comments from the audience.
Thank you, members of the commission.
Closing the public hearing. Thank you.
We just do have a few rebuttal comments that we'll make here. It seems to me that the Sub-Area Association has decided that they're going to say, this is your plan and you're not allowed to change it. The Sub-Area Association has every right to come in front of you just as we do today. But it's not the Sub-Area Association who makes this decision as to what's the appropriate land use for this county. That decision is yours. And so what I heard from the sub-association members today is, well, if we can't get our way, we're going to beline we're going to say Mr. Massoud was ignorant. He did something wrong. He's a bad neighbor. Look at him. This isn't about Mr. Massoud and whether he did or did not know anything beforehand, whether he assumed he could use this, but he's shown to you today who he really is. Not the poor picture that they've painted of him, but that somebody, when he was told that he could no longer store cars there, moved it, stopped doing it, cleaned up the lot, cleaner than any of the other lots. Yes, immediately to the north is Mr. Flynn's property. Mr. Flynn has a residential use. Mr. Flynn isn't objecting to this, and you saw that in his letter. Do not let people come here and say that Mr. Ben Massoud is a bad man. He's not. He's here to you because he's following the right process, a process that allows for amendment, and a process that he's asking you to make an equitable decision on. The very first speaker in opposition was Mr. Pritchard. He says this was designed in 2004 to be an equitable plan. The equities favor this map change because otherwise Mr. Ben Massoud is stuck with a vacant piece of land until someday, somehow, maybe, an assemblage can occur. That's what staff says, and that's what we've heard some of the opposition say. So, where's the equity in that? Not being able to use any sort of land. There's no equity there. The 2 real estate professionals who've come before you say they can't build a house there because of the nearness of the substation and because of the other surrounding uses. It's okay that they've gotten variances. It's okay that they're grandfathered in. It's okay that their home businesses are allowed, is what we've heard. It should also be okay for Mr. Ben Masood, because he just wants you to look at the land and make a land use decision based upon him showing, in good faith, that he's cleaned up this property once he understood what its limitations were, and won't do anything until you go ahead and make this final decision. And we ask for you to make that decision based upon the evidence that we have in front of you, in a respectful manner, to show that his vision and his plan is something that would abide by all setbacks, and in an effort to make that equitable vision of the comprehensive plan and the sub-area map work for everybody by moving the employment zone one property to the north. How could you ask for more than that? Because it probably doesn't apply to some of those other parcels that they're talking about and telling you to either vote on or think about in the future. We are asking you to be equitable, just as this plan was before, but apparently didn't focus on this property. Let him move forward by adopting the resolution that's in front of you that amends the plan so that he can have this as part of the employment zone. Mr. Masood, would you like to make any final comments?
Just want to thank you for your time. Again, I ask you to be pragmatic and rational. Look at the dynamic of the area. The people who spoke and opposing on that, they have businesses. Their cars are stored outside. Their trucks are stored outside in the streets. You could look for yourself. You could make a decision by just going to the area. You don't have to take my word. Go across Dayton and go across Colorado, and you see what kind of activity. Even the business, even the president of the association, he has a stockhold business, and he has people going in and out. Okay, so all what I'm saying is I want to be like everybody else, but different, because I came here and I try to comply. Where others use of their own private business, businesses in their own an area where it's not supposed to be. So all I'm saying to you, I came over here, I have done everything. And with 4 square miles, I went and met with them 2 times. A lot of stuff that he said is totally false. It's very offensive. When I met with one of them, one of these ladies, who I thought was really professional for what she said to me, that is your problem. That's exactly what she said. That is your problem. This is 4 square miles. This is the people of 4 square miles who are supposed to be pragmatic and rational. Sat down with them, explained to them everything. She told me in my face, that's your problem. Deal with it. Now I have a piece of land, there's nothing I can do with it. I also told them, I am very professional. I can use it right now, 3-4 years from now. I can buy Mr. Mike Flynn, who I talked with him. The minute he wants to buy his land, I would like to buy it. Then I've got 2 parcels. Then we can talk about doing some business and doing a multi-families. Everybody in 4 square miles, no. And their heart, no, there's no house can be built there. Everybody in Arapahoe County, no, that there is no house can be built in this area. Because of the commercial ahead of me, because of the power plants, and because of all employees. But because of conflict of interest, they will not say it. That is the issue I have. I came forward and explained to you my situation and the dilemma I am. Please acknowledge what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question for the applicant. Mr. Ben Masood, what size is your parcel?
Square foot? Yeah. It's 85 by 104. Okay. And again, when I talk with Larry, when I talk with Bill Skinner, the idea is to have 2 bays, 2-3 bays, maybe 10 cars. And we agreed on that. And Bill Skinner agreed with me. And he's the one who came with the plan. And I said, Bill, and there is listening. I said, whatever you think is deemed right, I can do. Give me 2 bays, 10 cars is sufficient for me. And I say it in front of you, and I raise my right hand. 10 cars is sufficient for that area. Just give me 2-3 days. Let me utilize the land right now, recently, in a clean area, 3-4 years from now, where 4 square miles understand what the area is going to be, because nobody knows what's going to happen. Then I am game. I am game, and that's what I told Mr. Lambert.
That answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll now bring it back to the Planning Commission for consideration, questions, or other.
Madam Chair, I have a question for our attorney. If this particular parcel was rezoned for business use and let's say 3 years down the road, other parcels were assembled, let's just say for multifamily use because that's what's occurring mostly in that area, it would have to be rezoned again. Is that accurate or inaccurate?
Well, if it was rezoned to commercial and they wanted to make a multifamily use, yes, it would have to be rezoned back to the residential, appropriate residential use.
Right. Great. Thank you.
Now,
thank you.
Are there any other questions or considerations or concerns of the Planning Commission, or are we ready to move forward?
Actually, I got a real quick question. I'm just trying to get something wrapped around here. Mr. Butler, can I just, so you've kind of been handling most of this, it sounds like?
Yes, on the plan amendment side.
So if his vision is right, that he's got this property that can't get a house built on it, what other options does he have? Does he have any other options besides this? I mean, I'm just looking.
If you were to look at the definition of the residential zone, it does say that some related non-residential uses could be put in there. Okay. So it wouldn't be an auto storage lot, but there could be some possibilities for I don't know if you would call it commercial, at least non-residential uses that would be consistent with the comprehensive plan designation. Okay. For example, there's the next block up on Dayton. There's a house that's been turned into an office. It sits in the 1 to 2 residential dwelling units per acre. I think that would be considered consistent with that broader definition of residential.
Okay. So really, if you were trying to establish a flower shop in there and build some sort of home to do this flower shop out of, we probably wouldn't be here today?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a way to limit the number of cars that he has? If this does get approved, is there a way to actually limit the number of cars, or is that something that's just going to be, we have to just believe that it's going to happen?
He would have to go through a rezoning process now because it's currently zoned residential. So we'd have to find a commercial category, one of the business districts, that would be appropriate for what he wants to do and that will fit the lot. So I think within those classifications we'd have to work, and that's on the current planning side, so they know a lot more about it than I do, whether there's a category that would have a limited amount of parking in it. And we think, they go from B1 to B4. One of those might be one where it could limit the amount of parking that would be allowed.
Any other questions? Thank you. I guess I would like to state publicly that I did take a drive this past weekend to the subject property, but it's hard to really see it because of the fencing, but I got a feel for the whole area. But I also believe strongly in what the 4 Square Mile group has done, and I do believe in their Dirty Dozen. So to me, it's not an easy one. Any other comments or anybody? The left side of the table want to do anything tonight? The right side of the table?
It's a tough one.
I agree.
I guess, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a comment, not a motion. I live in the general proximity of that area and drove by it today just to refresh my memory on that particular area. And it is difficult. I do agree that it would be very difficult to make that particular parcel residential successfully. There is a lot, it seems to be, there's a lot of employment in the area. There is a diverse use directly across the street, which is Aurora. Technically Aurora, but it would still be right in your front yard, is significant high-density multifamily. And while I struggle with onesie, twosies to the sub-area plan, I guess I also struggle with whether or not this current designation is appropriate for that area. And regardless of the outcome tonight, I think that there should be more frequent review of these plans. And, you know, when they're 15 years old, I think that it's worth making sure the stakeholders on that side of Parker Road get their say. And I'm not sure how that works within Foursquare Mile, how people can get on the committees and so on, but I think it would be great to see how that process works and ensure that there's representation from all corners of this sub-area.
Are we stuck?
I would make a motion, but right now I don't know what motion to make. I'm just gonna say, because this is I realize there's houses on the north that I wouldn't build a house on this lot. I'm just saying. And I don't think a lot of people in Foursquare Mile would either. So.
Okay, well, the question is, do we agree with the proposed changing of the sub-area plan that all we're considering tonight? The zoning would come later, if it comes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Brummel.
In the case of LR 18-005, 1841 South Dayton Street Comprehensive Plan Amendment, the Planning Commission has read the proposed plan amendment in staff report and has considered additional information presented during the public hearing. We do find ourselves in agreement with staff findings 1 through 4 set forth in the staff report dated February 12th, 2019, and therefore deny the application.
Do we have a second for Mr. Brummel's motion?
I'll second.
Very good. Mr. Stahl has seconded the motion. I guess we better have a voice vote.
Commissioner Laxis?
Yes. No.
Commissioner Wallman votes no. Commissioner Chapman?
Yes.
Commissioner Stahl?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
No.
Commissioner Cole?
Yes.
And Commissioner Beck?
Yes.
So we have 5 yes and 2 no. So the motion to deny the request.
Right, thank you very much.
I thought this is the last time. Yeah.
I think that may with the decision.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a very.
Oh, okay, yeah. Now I think we've met.
I think so too, yeah. Were you at the
Yes, it's birthday.
yeah.
Right, well, that was what, I mean, that was what my
I have to admit, riding on days.
Right.
That is,
Right. It's
I don't know.
And it's been for a long time until we just started adjoining hospitals to do something.
Right.
And I know that adjoining hospitals as will constitute an assemblage.
Right.
And they will turn into multi-family, but we just don't.
Yes.
My
Right, Jeff. Right. Give our landscape. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, we would.
Yeah.
It might be just a
Oh,
Just going to thank you for the seriousness of your consideration.
Yeah, mine is a more easy one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
And I think this area.
Oh, I know. Exactly. Well, that's what was freaky. And that's what accounting always faces when they start grandfathering or branding. And I understand, right, there's branding necessary. People can brand on commercial land. Like you brand the grandfather gets. Well, that's right. And my question. Now we have to change the commercial, you downzone it and then you upzone it again. So, you know, and I'm not saying there's never been. It does of going. They're very
Are you ready? Okay. Mr. Reynolds is going to go over the agricultural estates proposed revisions.
Yeah.
Wait, the second item.
All right. Wait.
Certainly. So, hopefully you can all hear me. This is a proposal to amend our agricultural estate lot width requirements. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, but it's hard to be second.
Mm-hmm. Especially after popular ones.
We're not ignoring you.
It's all right. No, wonderful. Right. Thank you to Jan for shooing folks out into the hallway. Yeah. So we're here tonight to talk about the agricultural estate zone district and the lot width requirements. This is a public hearing, and it was noticed in both the Villager and the I-70 Scout. So we did notice this public hearing. And right now, our zoning district requires both a 35-acre lot size and about a quarter-mile of lot width in order to receive a building permit on a lot out there. The proposed change would reduce the lot width to 600 feet while keeping the lot size the same area. And one additional element of the code is that existing parcels are proposed to be considered to meet the minimum lot width, even if they are actually narrower than 600 feet. And I've got a slide showing that a little later. So why change the code? 35-plus acre parcels don't receive a county review. So what has happened is a lot of surveyors will go out and create land survey plats or just split a parcel off of the main parcel, and these parcels may not meet our minimum lot width requirements. They are all over the county. A lot of them have houses on them already. Some of them may be where you've got the farmhouse and you've got the field next to the farmhouse and split that into a separate parcel, and we're told at the time that it was legitimate because it was 35 acres or larger, but maybe it doesn't meet the lot width requirement. We are currently holding up building permits. We've had a couple of those come through recently that do not meet the lot width requirements. And changing this to 600 feet would fit most existing properties, though not absolutely every last one. We are definitely an outlier when you look at pure counties. The top of the screen is Arapahoe County's minimum lot width of 1320. All other counties are in the 500 or 600 range for a 35-acre parcel, and a few counties have absolutely no lot width at all. Jefferson County, Douglas County, Larimer County, and Weld County require a certain lot size, but no width requirement. So our width requirement is really big because our AE zone district used to be really big. It used to be a 160-acre minimum lot size instead of 35. And in 1987, the county adjusted that down to 35 acres. But at the time, we did not make any changes to the lot width. So just to show a few examples around the county, this is just east of Byers. You can see this northern lot is about 660 feet wide. And just for comparison, showing off an A1 lot. So A1 is our 19-acre zone district. It has a much narrower lot width requirement. And these parcels are in an actual subdivision that was approved as an A1 subdivision. But this is an example just outside of Byers of something not meeting our lot width requirement, yet it's got a house on it. A couple other examples. There's a parcel that does meet our lot width requirement, and then one that does not, and this has a manufactured home on it that was constructed sometime in the last 20 years. The last example I'll show is west of the old dog track near I-70. This is a lot that does not meet the proposed 600 foot, and the one on the left does meet the proposed 600 foot. The way that we've designed the proposed code amendment is that existing parcels would be considered to meet that requirement as long as they met all other requirements. They've still got to be 35 acres. They would still have to meet any setbacks. So you have a 100-foot side yard setback in the AE district. If you've only got a 100-foot wide lot, that's not going to be buildable. It'll make great pasture. The assessor keeps parcel birth dates, which is something that becomes important when dealing with was something subdivided correctly. We're very familiar with the 1972 era because that's sort of the date that subdivision regulations were created. So the proposal and staff recommendation is to change the minimum lot width from 1,320 to 600 feet, and also to consider existing parcels to meet the lot width, even if they don't, knowing that they'd still have to meet all other criteria, including lot area and setbacks. So with that, I can take questions.
I have a question.
Certainly.
Madam Chair, may I ask a question? What would be the narrowest lot that would still meet the other requirements? Because that's the only problem I really had with that language. I realize that you're only grandfathering up to a certain point in time once this is adopted, but you mentioned obviously a 100-foot wide lot would not meet the other criteria. So what is the minimum lot width that would meet the criteria, just generally? Obviously, the configurations are going to be slightly different depending.
Right. So the minimum lot width would most likely be somewhere in the 300-foot range. And this would only be for an existing parcel. I'm just looking at the requirements on setbacks, and your side setbacks are both 100 feet. So you'd be 100 from either side, probably about 100 feet room to stick a house, and the septic field and well, and try to have the septic field and well meets separation requirements. Yeah. That's very important from a health perspective. So I'd guess about 300 feet is the narrowest something could reasonably be expected to work.
Do we know how many parcels exist that are let's say somewhere between 300 and 400 feet in width, just generally?
No.
Okay.
That's the short answer.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
My concern, and I know Mr. Brummel said the horse was out of the barn, but we did turn down the runway lots, although the commissioners, I think, approved it.
Right.
My concern is we're proposing going from 1,320 feet, which is the regulation, down to 600, and now we're saying, but if you're less than that, that's okay. So who's going to enforce this? And are we really just going to make it worse because we're loosening the regulations so much? And it seems like a lot of the people out there kind of do what they want anyway. And are we going to have 150-foot wide lots that don't meet the setback requirements?
Right. Yeah. So if someone does go out and create a 150-foot wide lot, their buyers would have a very unpleasant experience when they came to ask about building permits at the county, and
But did they ask for building permits?
Well,
I just feel like it's a whole enforcement
right.
problem.
Yeah, there's absolutely an enforcement issue, and the main issue is the creation of these parcels, because once you make something bigger than 35 acres, you don't even have to talk to the county. You just go record it at the clerk and recorder, who is obligated to record whatever is put in front of them. And, I have checked with our attorney's office, is there anything we could do to maybe, cause a 5-day timeout, or is there some way for us to double check that? And the answer I got was basically no, that the clerk and recorder is obligated to record what's presented. So, this is I think it was Laramie County or Larimer County had, one of the commissioners there talked about the Code of the West, and, how it's, there's, some inherent risks when you buy rural property. And I think Commissioner Brummel brought up last time about someone carving up a bunch of 40-acre lots that had absolutely no fire district. And yes, technically you could build a house on them, but you couldn't get a mortgage because they wanted fire protection, the banks did. So that's a really long way of acknowledging that enforcement is difficult. Our goal with this is to say, okay, so if your lot was created before or your parcel was created before 2019, we can live with that as long as you can meet some setbacks and meet the other requirements. And going forward, I did reach out to a couple of surveyors who've done a fair amount of work in Arapahoe County and let them know that we are proposing this change, and that they really should pay attention to the 600 feet, and that we in the planning office are very happy to answer any questions they have about the zoning requirements. I've not gotten a response to those emails.
There you go.
Thank you.
Maybe you need to have your county attorney write the letters to the surveyors, by the way.
Will be done before.
Yes. I have no doubt.
I mean, are there other problems?
Grandfathered lots then are recorded with the county before 2019.
Right. So
there are people out there that have just surveyed a place. I don't know that they've recorded this.
Right. So it would have to actually be recorded. Yeah. And it would have to be effective. The recording would have to have happened prior to the effective date of this ordinance. So if it gets adopted, it may not.
Well, okay. Well, you talked about educating the surveyors. Well, how do you educate the property owners to affect recording the instrument? So, I mean, this is a noble goal, so at least you have something enforceable at some point or another, but you have outliers, right, as Mr. Brummel has so confidently pointed out to us. So,
yeah, and our hope is that by bringing us more in line with what other counties require for similar size of parcels, that it will make it easier for people to follow the rules. Because currently, we're a huge outlier. Ours is more than twice as large as any other requirement on the chart there. So if someone's familiar with, working up in Adams County, 600 feet is normal for a 35-acre parcel. That's the hope anyway.
Any other questions?
I do have another question. I'm sorry. This is troubling to me. So how are the other counties ensuring through their recordation process, through the clerk, because the clerk is mandated by the state to record, property transfers and deeds that come to them. How are the other counties who have 600-foot width requirement, obviously the counties that have none, they don't think it's a problem for them at this point. If they did, they would probably come up with some kind of width requirement. But how do the other counties enforce their width requirements?
Yeah, it would be similar to how we would by withholding building permits.
Okay.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah. It's like now you have this piece of land that you can't do.
Then how do you know they don't build on it? They don't need a permit.
Yeah. Anyway, or throw a mobile home on it.
Yeah.
How are you defining width?
So width is based on where the lot or the parcel is in relation to the road. So I will talk a little bit. So in this case, your width is going to be along the county road here.
All those lots are half mile long.
Right. Yep. So one thing that, I think in the past, some zoning administrators may have, I guess the technical term is got cute with the definitions and said, okay, if you bring in your driveway here and hook it up to the north and your house is facing this long part, we're going to call that your front yard setback. Right. And that doesn't meet our definition of where the front yard setback is. And, lot width is determined at the front yard setback. So along this street, it would be 100 feet back from the roadway, and then you measure the width there of the lot. So
You have a lot of lots that aren't on county roads.
right. So if you've got a private driveway that comes off the county road, it would be, where is the access off that private road? Right.
The private road would count.
Right, for purposes of width. So if someone were to drag a private street in, your width becomes measured off that private street, not the lot line closest to the road. It's where you're actually, accessing it off a road, whether that road is a shared private road or a public road. So in this case, you've got 745.
How difficult would it be to just make it a ratio?
Depth to width ratio, there are jurisdictions that require that. The first jurisdiction I worked in required all lots to be designed with 3-to-1 depth to width ratio, so that you didn't end up with really skinny, really long lots. And
yeah, I vote for that.
It's definitely something worth considering. Because it does create a situation where you don't have those bowling alley type lots.
Which doesn't address the problem you're trying to clean up.
Yes.
Also, it has the same difficulty of enforcement because it doesn't go through subdivision. So.
Yeah. Now so for example, in the A1 district where it's a 19-acre minimum lot size, you're required to go through a subdivision process through the county, which means we can take a much closer look at these things when they come through, and that's where a depth to width ratio would be very easy to enforce as opposed to in the AE district where you're creating 35s. It's harder to enforce in 35 plus acre zone district.
Other questions at this time? And I think we'll open up the public hearing and we'll probably have you come back.
All right, sorry.
Okay, we have 2 people, I think, who have signed in. The first one is Phil Scott. Please state your name and address.
Phil Scott from Byers, 6971 South County Road 185. I did have a little bit of a feel that maybe you people have not ever seen a plot map. Because you were asking about different sizes, shapes, and whatnot. I brought mine in not thinking I was going to do this, but I'll just like to kind of look at a plot map and see what surveyors do. If you want to look at that, I need that back. One of you ladies asked, well, how are you going to enforce this? When we get our taxes, we have a parcel number. It shows the acres on it and the building. Is it the building department that does the tax, or who does the taxes? They're the ones that would be in charge of the size of a lot out there. I sold some ground 20 years ago, north of where we're at off of 181. I was required to give a 60-foot easement around each parcel. So that at the time I didn't realize what that was for, but now I see that, what that was for. That way they got their 1,320 feet on all them parcels. One question to you guys, ladies, when was that changed? So that when I bought this piece of ground 2 years ago, that easement was not around that. We were not told when we bought that there would be a problem getting a building permit because of this width stipulation. I was not aware of that until our neighbor Rachel and her husband went to get a building permit and was told they couldn't do it because of the width deal. The 600 foot, that would be a fair distance from now on. But I feel the ones that were not notified of this, like myself, like Rachel, like some other neighbors out there, we should be grandfathered in with a statement in writing so that in 3 or 4 months or a year, when I come to get a permit, I don't have to go through this again. So I hope the consideration is there to do the 600 from now forward, but to grandfather us in because of the fact that we were not notified when we bought this ground that this was taking place.
How wide's your lot?
Mine's 544 on the front and 6 something on the back side. And like I say, we were not notified when we bought these parcels. No easement, no nothing like that. My question is, when was that changed to where there was not that easement put around each parcel? Thank you.
Thank you. I thank Kim Douglas.
No, she was for the other team.
Yeah. And Rachel Lee.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Lai. I reside at 6954 South County Road 181 in Byers. For a second, I actually thought he had my lot up there. An example. As to Phil's point, when we purchased our property, it was zoned AE. And so when we were looking for property out in Adams, Arapahoe, Weld, Arapahoe, we were looking for the land that was zoned essentially agricultural estates. We want cattle, we want our livestock, we want our house, we want our outbuilding. We want to essentially be able to do with our land what we want. I mean, nothing crazy, but I mean, for cattle, having a limited amount of animals that the land will support. And so when we purchased our land, we're the parcel directly below Phil and Linda. This was also zoned AE. Ours was zoned AE. We did our due diligence. We called the county. We got the legal. We did everything. Our lots are 38 acres. Did we want long and skinny? No. We wanted the square. But that's far and few between. There's so many lots out there that are long and skinny that you can see. And this affects, oh gosh, hundreds of people just within a 10-mile radius of me. I mean, I was on the phone with Jeff Baker, and I'm like counting 1, 2, 3, like just counting all the lots, and it was insane of how many are long and skinny. We're 638 feet wide and a half-mile long. So we fall clearly under the 600 feet. My concern was, like Phil and Linda, they need to be grandfathered in. They've already built their house. They're eventually going to want cattle and to build their pole barn. Our pole barn was denied. And that's how I think some of us got brought to light. They're like, oh, your lot's too small. Like, what are you talking about? It's already a developed lot. So that's when it came to light that we're not 1320 feet. We're not square. And that's basically what that was designed to be, is square lots. And there's no. It just, it's the wild, wild west, like you guys said out there. And in the way for enforcement, like you're asking, is I think your zoning department. How are you going to zone all these new lots that are being out there and being subdivided? We have brand new lots that are right off of County Road 42 and 181. Nice farmer. Someone offered him a lot of money. He sold his land. And now I believe there's 8 or 9 parcels. I could be incorrect. But they're selling them for $115,000 as 35 to 40 acre lots. I have no idea if they're square or rectangle. But I think that's where zoning needs to come in when these things are proposed and say, no, you don't meet the criteria. Also for educating homeowners, I don't necessarily think it's all homeowners. I think real estate agents need to be educated. Because Don Claymore, I believe, is who subdivided our lots. He worked with Mr. Curtis, who was the farmer who owned ours. And he's a real estate agent. And he proposed the plots. He's the one who's, subdivided us into 8 plots. We're the Curtis Estates. We have covenants. And we're non-compliant. But it was a real estate agent who helped subdivide these. So I think a lot of education, homeowners do need to be educated, but also real estate agents. I think the zoning department should hold a lot of responsibility, because this is what could have essentially be changed is our zoning. If you take my AE away, I become A1. That limits the amount of animals I can have, that limits the buildings I can have on my land, and that wasn't the purpose that I bought this land for. So I appreciate the 600. I fully 100% agree with grandfathering in, moving from a certain date. But I think also moving forward, it does, some falls on the county of how will you guys approve future plots to be out there. And so, I guess to my point is I speak on a lot of my neighbors. They couldn't be here. We live in Byers. It's a jive. But even with the 500 minimum width, believe it or not, you still have a lot of room out there. You're not on top of your neighbors. You can still have your peace and quiet that you moved out east for. So I just wanted to kind of answer some of your questions and explain to you guys how some of us homeowners did do our due diligence, did our research, and still now we're caught in a mess because of something that was missed from 1987. So thank you very much for your time, and if you guys have questions, I can try and answer them. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak to this?
We're the only ones who made the trek. I believe some people made email comments, questions, whatever else.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming. Nobody else wants to come forward. We will consider you the end of the public hearing. Jason, do you have any other final comments for us?
I think she highlighted a lot of the issues that folks who live in the rural areas have to contend with, and I'll chat with Mr. Scott afterwards to understand the easement question a little better.
Okay, so you were asking us to take a vote on this? Yes, Mr. Rummel, please. He's on a roll.
He's 2 for 2.
In the case of LDC 19-001, AE Zone District lot width reduction, the planning commissioners have reviewed the staff report, including all exhibits and attachments, and have listened to the applicant's presentation, and any public comment is presented at the public hearing. I hereby move to recommend approval of this application based on the findings in the staff report, subject to condition 1.
Do we have a second for the motion?
I'll second, Madam Chair.
Mrs. Latsis seconds the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Opposed.
I'm opposed. That's 5 to 2.
Okay.
All right. So we have this tentatively scheduled for April 2nd at the Board of County Commissioners. I believe that'll be a morning meeting. And tonight, the Planning Commission forwarded a recommendation of approval to the board.
Very good. Thank you. Any other announcements? I guess not.
Certainly. The March 5th Planning Commission meeting will be at the main admin building, and you can look forward to chickens and backyard bees as 2 separate items. This does not affect agricultural areas, which are already allowed to have livestock, chickens, and bees.
Yeah.
That's the feedback that I got from one of the people who was here. He said, "Hey, I noticed this bunch of $500 we weren't going to pick that up.
The minute I know this captain, I got it. And then we had to have a change up there, and I'm like, I got that. So we had to down. Yeah, you take that, yeah, there's no way that you can do it. Watch a lesson in the national cheer. That's a really big place. We just do anything. Out over the song.
When I first started in Nebraska in 2000, I think it was